The story begins with a man named John Bridger, who has just been released from prison. At the moment, he is in Venice, and upon stepping out, he calls his daughter, Stella. John tells her that he wants to give her a gift, but Stella sarcastically asks if he has a receipt for it. Stella is well aware of her father's reputation as a cunning thief. A little later, we see John meeting up with his old crew. This time, they are planning a heist to steal gold bars worth $10 million from a safe located in a house built over water. According to their plan, they plant explosives under the safe and detonate them, causing the safe to drop directly into the water. Soon, the police are on their trail, but the group manages to escape with the gold. Eventually, the crew reaches a snowy mountainous area where John praises Charlie, one of his teammates, for planning the entire heist. As they proceed further, their path is suddenly blocked on a bridge by men working for Steve, one of their own teammates. Steve holds a gun to Handsome Rob's head and orders his men to unload the gold bars from their bus. When John attempts to get off the bus, Steve points a gun at him as well. John warns Steve that the rest of the team will not let him get away with this betrayal. But Steve, blinded by greed, shoots John. Meanwhile, Handsome Rob drives the bus straight into the icy water below. Steve and his men fire a barrage of bullets, intending to ensure no one survives. Fortunately, the crew manages to escape by swimming to the riverbank. Once out, Charlie mourns the loss of their boss, John, and vows to take revenge on Steve. 1 year later, we see Stella working as a locksmith for the police department. One day, Charlie visits her at her office and informs her that he has found Steve's location. He asks for her help in stealing the gold back from Steve, but Stella refuses, stating that she is not a thief like her father. However, later that night, she changes her mind and calls Charlie, saying she wants to see the look on Steve's face when they take the gold from him. The next morning, Charlie introduces Stella to the rest of the crew, and they begin preparing for their plan. First, they locate Steve's house and study the cameras surrounding it. They decide to send Stella in as a spy, as she is the only one Steve doesn't know. Meanwhile, Steve is seen selling gold bars to a man named Yevon. Yevon buys 4 bars and expresses interest in purchasing more in the future. Charlie's team is closely monitoring Steve's every move. To infiltrate Steve's house, they plan to disguise Stella as a cable technician. Handsome Rob sweet-talks a female cable technician, spends the night with her, and the next morning, steals her uniform and van keys. Rob hands over the uniform and keys to Stella, who dons the disguise. Left ear cuts Steve's TV cable, forcing him to call for repairs. The team ensures that Steve is directed to them, and Stella is sent to his house. Wearing a tiny camera on her shirt, Stella gains access to Steve's house. Upon seeing Stella's beauty, Steve begins to show off his wealth. Meanwhile, the camera on Stella captures a detailed layout of the house. Steve flirts with Stella and asks her out on a date. Initially, Stella refuses but later agrees. When Stella returns, Charlie and the team analyze the house layout and prepare the next phase of their plan. They fit Mini Coopers with reinforced interiors to carry the gold. Stella drives one of the cars and realizes they need more space for all the gold. They call in a mechanic named Wrench to modify the vehicles further. On the other hand, Lyle, the hacker, demonstrates his ability to control traffic systems. He creates a traffic jam by manipulating traffic lights, impressing Charlie with his skills. Meanwhile, Left Ear works on designing explosives for the mission. Soon, Wrench completes the modifications, and the team tests the cars, which exceed their expectations. Meanwhile, Steve visits Yevon to sell more gold. During their conversation, Yevon brings up the infamous gold heist in Venice, which makes Steve uneasy. Enraged, Steve grabs Yevon by the neck and demands to know who else he told about the heist. Yevon insists he hasn't told anyone, but Steve loses his temper and shoots him. Later, Yevon's brother, Mashkov, arrives and is shocked to find Yevon's lifeless body. Mashkov, the leader of the Ukrainian mafia, vows to avenge his brother's death. Meanwhile, Charlie and Left Ear visit a thug named Skinny Pete to purchase weapons. On the way, Charlie warns Left Ear not to laugh at Pete, but upon meeting him, Left Ear is taken aback. Contrary to his name, Skinny Pete is extremely overweight. At the same time, Mashkov interrogates one of Yevon's men, learning that a tall man with long black hair had been buying gold bars from Yevon. Mashkov realizes this man is Steve and starts hunting him down. Meanwhile, Charlie's team prepares for the next phase of the heist. Lal tracks Steve and discovers he is on his way to a date with Stella. Charlie and the crew arrive at Steve's house to execute their plan, but find that Steve's neighbors are throwing a party. With so many people around, creating a distraction with explosives becomes impossible, forcing the team to cancel their plan temporarily. Stella was compelled to go on a date with Steve. At the restaurant, Steve complimented Stella's beauty and later invited her to his house. However, Stella declined, saying, "I trust people, but not the monsters hiding within them." This was something her father, John, often used to say. Hearing this, Steve mentioned that he had heard this phrase before and suddenly grabbed Stella's hand. But at that very moment, Charlie and his team entered the restaurant. Seeing them alive left Steve completely stunned. He immediately realized he wasn't safe anymore. Trying to mask his fear, Steve started bragging about his high-tech security system, claiming that they could never break into his safe. Charlie didn't respond with words. Instead, he landed a hard punch on Steve's face. After this, the team left the restaurant and returned to their hideout, where Charlie calmed Stella down. Soon, Lyle informed them that Steve was planning to transport all his gold to Mexico. Hearing this, Charlie came up with a plan to intercept the truck carrying the safe during transit. Lyle expressed his doubts, pointing out that Steve would have undoubtedly taken extreme precautions. Steve was known to use heavily secured trucks and helicopters for such operations. Later, Skinny Pete called Charlie to ask about Yevon's murder. Charlie denied any involvement. Afterward, Charlie and Handsome Rob went to inspect a new truck for the heist. Charlie then called Wrench and assigned him the task of modifying the vehicle. Wrench, eager to be part of the action, expressed his desire to join the team, and Charlie welcomed him aboard. The next step involved Charlie and Left Ear planting explosives under the bridge where the gold truck was supposed to pass. Finally, the much-anticipated day arrived. The entire team waited anxiously for Steve's convoy. As expected, Steve sent 3 identical trucks to mislead anyone trying to follow him. However, Charlie had already anticipated this move. He instructed Lyle to track the weight of each truck's wheels, reasoning that the one carrying the gold would be significantly heavier. Lyle used CCTV footage to identify Truck 128 as the heaviest. The team began following Truck 128, but at a crossroads, all 3 trucks split off in different directions. Thinking quickly, Lyle manipulated the traffic lights to create a jam on the route of Truck 128, forcing it to stop. From a helicopter, Steve watched the situation unfold and immediately instructed his pilot to turn back. Meanwhile, Lyle used the traffic system to divert Truck 128 off its intended path. Charlie's team quickly caught up, and an intense chase ensued between their vehicles and the gold-laden truck. Charlie's truck maneuvered through stairs and even crossed a train station, where Lyle temporarily halted a train to ensure they stayed on schedule. Eventually, they reached the bridge, waiting for Wrench's signal. As Truck 128 approached, Wrench gave the green light. Left Ear triggered the explosives, collapsing part of the bridge and sending the truck crashing into the river below. Simultaneously, Wrench activated a trapdoor on the bridge to prevent Steve's men from reaching the truck. Steve, observing the chaos, ordered his men to locate the truck immediately. Charlie's team found the truck, but was shocked to discover that the safe inside was different from the one Stella had seen at Steve's house. Charlie asked Stella to open the safe. Stella acknowledged that cracking the code would be nearly impossible and decided to drill through it instead. After much effort, she successfully opened the safe, and the team quickly transferred the gold into their Mini Coopers. The team celebrated as they drove off with the gold, but their joy was short-lived as Steve's men began chasing them, firing relentlessly. Charlie and his team retaliated, leading to a high-speed chase on the highway. Steve, still in his helicopter, spotted the team and started following them. At one point, Charlie's car narrowly avoided colliding with the helicopter by making a sharp turn. Steve, desperate, abandoned the helicopter, hijacked a car, and resumed the pursuit. However, Charlie's team had anticipated this. They loaded the Mini Cooper onto a train and escaped in a different vehicle. Steve eventually reached the train and encountered Wrench, mistaking him for a worker. Offering $55,000, Steve persuaded Wrench to lead him to the Mini Cooper. Wrench pretended to comply, opened the train car, and stepped aside. To Steve's shock, Charlie emerged from the train, laughing at his blunder. Realizing he had been outsmarted, Steve pulled out his gun, ready to kill Charlie. But before he could act, the Ukrainian mafia arrived. Steve, startled, asked, "Who are you?" The mafia leader replied, "I'm Yevon's brother." Steve froze, his face turning pale. He stammered, denying any involvement in Yevon's murder. The mafia leader ignored his pleas. Taking advantage of the moment, Stella landed a punch on Steve's face, avenging her father's death. The mafia dragged Steve away, leaving him to face their wrath. Meanwhile, Charlie's team, now in possession of the gold, drove off to start their new lives. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for our next adventure.